back in history, particularly royal history, it's fascinating as to how many of the stories are, shall we say, airbrushed out, you know, the sort of thing. And then, of course, because of diaries being accessed and published and stuff like that, you do find out, you know, the bigger stories, the bigger truths. I'm now wondering exactly as and when the diaries of the late Queen Elizabeth, our 70-year reigning monarch, well, when they get published, what will we find out that we didn't know? I mean, there's lots out there, but of course she was a very private person who didn't necessarily show her emotions or her feelings. But of course, the diary, well, as Mae West famously said, keep a diary and the diary will keep you. Meaning, of course, you could sell it as an autobiography. Clever woman, Mae, right? I'm sure we'll all agree. But you see, when you look back, as I say, in history, there are certain things that, well, you know, you didn't know and then you discover. Like this, for instance, you see, Queen Victoria, it was said, didn't particularly get on with her son, Edward, you know, who turned out to be King Edward VII. And as I pointed out, you know, King Edward VII to me was a clever man because you talk about reinventing the monarchy, he truly did at the turn of the century. There, of course, he lost his mother literally in the first year of the century and then had a very short period to modernise it. And he did it so well in what we now know today through periodicals, pictures, early forms of motion picture, and, you know, getting out there and meeting the public, breaking down barriers, shaking hands, that sort of stuff. And as I said, you know, the story goes that Queen Victoria and her son didn't really see eye to eye. You see, the story was that she felt he was something of a playboy prince, didn't take the role seriously, and more importantly, she found it, well, you know, the job should be this. He was looking at it as, well, we're on this age of a new dawn, you have to be more accessible. And let's not forget, Queen Victoria had shut herself away for many, many years, apparently in mourning for Prince Albert. But again, when you look deeper into the story, one might suggest, of course, that, you know, she kind of lost interest with being the monarch. She liked what it came with, but didn't necessarily want to go through all the rigmarole. And as we know, she spent a lot of time up in Balmoral and Sandringham, out of the way of her subjects in the very heart of London. The other story goes too is that Prince Albert was more instrumental. You know, he was the drive, the pusher, forcing her to change, and he really ran the monarchy from behind the scenes. Some people might say there are also similarities between the late Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, and Queen Elizabeth. She was very shy and he was the outgoing one, but did it brilliantly and made sure that she always shone, which I thought was wonderful of him, to be honest. But the one thing that Queen Victoria and Edward truly agreed on was this. Let me explain. Are you all right, chums? We haven't had a wave, are we? I'll just sort of give you a quick wave. It's a funny thing. You see, Queen Victoria, as I said, strange woman in many respects, had, you know, great sides to her, could be very difficult with staff and servants. And one of the things that she didn't really like was the fact that obviously she was of a, shall we say, fuller-figured nature. We've all got that problem, haven't we, ladies and gents? You know, you get to a certain age, that extra bone sticks to you like glue, right? Now, Queen Victoria had a vast appetite, and that was something that, of course, her son, Edward, literally had the same thing. You know, whatever he didn't really exercise that much, but he did have a playboy lifestyle, drank to excess, smoked to excess, and of course, ate to excess. But a little bit like his mother, the one thing that they were not allowed to do, the royal dressmakers and tailors, was to actually say to them, you put on weight, you're too fat. Now, I can tell you this from a first-hand experience because my great-grandfather was in fact a tailor to, that's right, Edward VII. And what was fascinating about this was he got a lot of the commissions through a lot of the things that people don't realise. You see, like Queen Victoria, she did not want to know the sizing. And the way round this, that royal tailoresses and male tailors got around, and they did this both with Victoria and the Prince, was to put in fake labels. So if you were, say, a size 52, right, you would make that 10 smaller, 42. And so consequently, they'd have special tape measures as well, and they would measure them so that right in front of their very eyes, they could say, oh, no, I don't know where you've been to or what you're going to, but this is how it looks. And so consequently, both Queen Victoria and I'm sure the Prince of Wales knew that these people were, shall we say, not telling them the truth, But in the public domain of their servants, courtiers, ladies in waiting, there it could be verified that actually the others had got it wrong. They weren't as big as they thought, and as long as you went along with that, with, say, the Queen and the Prince of Wales, well then things were fine and dandy. And more importantly, that's how many kept their jobs. And it's fascinating to know, isn't it, that even if you are of that stature, a monarch and a monarch in waiting, as long as people are not telling you the truth, well then apparently you're happy. What do we think to that? Neil Sean, Kensington, London.